Good morning and welcome to this WIOA Summit presentation on the IWIB CIC Evaluation Framework. Today we have with us Kathy Olson-Tracy and Brian Richard, who will be walking through the evaluation framework for use for evaluation on your programs, policies, or processes. So right now I'm going to turn it over to both Kathy and Brian to get us started.
Hello, I want to thank you for joining us and taking time to review this information. We're really proud of this work on behalf of the IWIB and looking at evaluations as a part of WIOA. So to give you a little background on what this project is a process to determine how to best evaluate some of the activities happening within the workforce space. So in 2019, all of our core partners partnered together and participated in a Department of Labor evaluation learning community. And that part of that was to develop a really good understanding of what evaluation looks like in the workforce spaces. So together, we worked in learning communities and developed a really solid understanding of the Department of Labor evaluation framework. And from that came this toolkit that was developed to bring all of these ideas together and create an online resource for our programs as they look for strategies to conduct evaluation. So the toolkit is built using an equity lens. We infused equity throughout the entire process. And we used a lot of research and a lot of existing tools to build our framework. The online toolkit was created using the 2020 Department of Labor Evaluation Toolkit called Key Elements for State Workforce Agencies. The ability to put this online allowed us to embed some really high quality resources from professional development videos that we've used to highlight key aspects of equity, evaluation, and workforce systems. So this is a very engaging, comprehensive resource that we're releasing right now to give you the tools for evaluation. So as we work through today, we're going to look at the practical use of the evaluation toolkit by kind of exploring what's available to you as a user. And then we're going to share with you how we piloted this, and so you understand how it can be used in your real world and what lessons we've learned, and then the tools that we built into this based on our lessons learned. The toolkit has a really interactive framework, and you can navigate it through it in order, or you can navigate as areas that you only need to resource and reference. So we begin with an executive summary, and then we talk about the framework and how we've infused equity throughout. We've looked at what evaluation really means, especially in the workforce space. There are a variety of logic models that you can use in your evaluations. We've shared different models and how those can be applied. We look at how do you plan an evaluation? And if you're going to select an evaluator, how does that process look? So we've even kind of delved into that. We've worked through what it's like to implement your evaluation. And as you know, you may want data. So there's even a section on how that you can get data, where you can request it from, and what those processes look like. And then we wrap up with glossaries and acronym lists and resources like that, so that you understand kind of the reference points throughout the entire document. It's a very comprehensive, easy to follow, easy to progress through framework that you can go from beginning to end, or you can go through the pieces that you need to look at. Let's talk about what it looks like. If you see this screen capture, it is what these pages are going to look like. And you'll see very consistent design and a very easy to lay out, navigate. The evaluation begins with a summary. We talk about the purpose of the evaluation. We talk about the goals of an evaluation, and then we bring out the content and talk about next steps. So each one of these are very easy to navigate. And when you click on the buttons, they're going to expand and give you more information. And you can move through the sections and get back home in a very easy to navigate system. So the executive summary provides, again, the purpose. And the purpose of this is to create a framework and tool so that at the local level, you can create evaluation and you can understand what's happening and you can work through the processes in a very easy to use format with supported by research and supported by effective tools. One of the things we're looking at is how to showcase this information. So the content is very laid out and very easy again. And I've said that often because the word evaluation can kind of sometimes be scary. How do we do this? What does it look like? So when I talk about the easy to use navigation, it's about the framework being a very simple process to work through and to apply very rigorous, high quality evaluation with tools at your fingertips.
So there's a lot of information in this tool, and recognizing that as part of the executive summary, there's this evaluation checklist that lays out all of the important components that are included in the framework, and then points you to the sections where you can find more information about these. So this is really the components of the evaluation process at a glance, so that you can walk through and make sure you're looking at all of the different components in your approach to evaluation. And so, as I said, the checklist has a reference to each section. So, for example, the first item on the checklist is focused on equity. And to get the details about how to do that, you go to section 2, and where you can see a summary of equity as it relates to evaluation. And then also within the introduction to the framework, that there are a number of different references, that there's a lot of information included, but evaluation is a big topic. And so the introduction gives links to other resources that you can find, definition of terms within the WIOA requirements. There's a lot of WIOA Wednesday webinars, and one specifically about evaluation. And then because equity is such an integral part of this, it's introduced within the introduction and talks about how it's infused throughout the remaining parts of framework.
So why does equity take such a huge focus up of what we're doing? Well, as we look at evaluation, we're always looking at the best way to bring information forward, and equity is certainly a priority in our state. So we looked at defining equity, and we approached it using vision of equity adopted by our IWIB Equity Task Force. And again, their focus, and I don't want to read slides to you, but I do think this is important, so I want to highlight what we're saying here. Equity is the state, quality, or ideal of being just, impartial, and fair. The concept of equity is synonymous with fairness and justice. It is helpful to think of equity as not simply a desired state of affairs or a lofty value. To be achieved and sustained, equity needs to be thought of as a structural and systemic concept. So when we looked at infusing the entire framework with an equity lens, we're ensuring that as we look at the systemic the pieces of our system, we want to make sure that we are building a system that is fair and just. So that's one of the reasons this is a high priority, and we're looking at it, and everything you're going to see is going to count that lens approach throughout. So what I really do like about these evaluation checklists, early on in this conversation, I said you can only go to the parts you want to look at, or you can read the entire framework from beginning to end. These evaluation checklists allow you to do at a high level glance, where do you need to focus? And if you're looking here, Introduction to Evaluation, if you want to discover how to pick an evaluation, what type you're going to do and the varieties of evaluations that are available, you can go straight to section 3. And you know that that's where you have to look to get that information covered. So these little checklists are very useful to help you pick and choose what you really want to focus on. Again, the beauty of having an online living document is that you can navigate through the parts that you really need, beginning to end, or pieces that you really want to focus on. So as we're looking at what you should consider an evaluation, where do we begin? You look at your toolkit, you're looking through the pieces, you're doing a checklist. But really, the Introduction to Evaluation gives you that framework. What do you need to think about with evaluation? What are you trying to accomplish? How is it going to help your program working towards continuous improvement? What are the different types of evaluation that are available that you can use, and how do they best fit with what you're trying to answer, the questions you're looking for, the project you're evaluating? So all of that is housed in the Introduction to Evaluation, and it gives you a very useful resource to decide what you're trying to accomplish with evaluation. What is your specific goal, and how are you going to get there? The Introduction to Evaluation talks about the different types: implementation study, an outcome study, an impact study, and a cost study. So all of these are very different ways that you can conduct evaluation, and we're providing the tools, the logic models, and the resources that you can conduct any of these models of evaluation at your program to kind of get that idea of continuous improvement and how do you continue to move forward. There is under resources an evaluation professional development video and the Department of Labor evaluation principles chart. Sorry, it's a chart, not a chart. So the Department of Labor evaluation principles chart. And we're talking about really the rigor, the relevance, the ethics about your evaluation. So all of that is housed in an easy to navigate site.
The next section of the framework focuses on logic models. So again, you can see this is an important part of the checklist, points you to section 4. Now we'll talk a little bit more about what's included in logic models. So this is an important step, I think, in any evaluation, is to create a logic model. It's, as you'll see, we'll show you a couple of examples. It's a visualization of how the resources are used within a program and expected outcomes, expected incomes, expected impacts. And I think the process of creating this logic model is a really important exercise for somebody trying to better understand their program. Just the process of going through the creation of a logic model really helps you understand how your program is using its resources to try to obtain the expected outcomes. There are a number of resources within the framework, some step-by-step guides that kind of guide you through the process, as well as a template where you can recreate based on just the template what your program logic model includes. So here's one example of a logic model for Rend Lake College's ICAPS programs. I'm going to walk through another example of an evaluation and share the logic model of that one with you as well near the end of the presentation.
So where do you begin in planning? So we're talking about all of the resources that are available. And we're also going to even start with, let's take it a step. And now that you know what type of evaluation, you know it's equity focused, you decided what kind of evaluation you want to do. You're thinking about a logic model, you're working your way through this process. And now we're talking about the evaluation planning. And again, you'll notice on the website there are embedded videos, which I think is the added benefit of doing this as a website, because we can embed high quality relevant videos to support what you're reading and using. So here we're looking at what steps need to happen in the planning. We've gotten through the first part, now we're talking about planning. In the beginning, you're going to talk about SMART goals. You know, they're specific, measurable, answerable, realistic, and timely. So we're looking at the goals and how to set those. You want to look at those SMART research questions, and we even provide resources on how to do that. There's a self-assessment that you can create in this evaluation planning to see where you are. And again, it's all about the resources built into this tool. So if you find out that you need to kind of backstep and look at something again, it's readily available to you. So your evaluation planning is going to start with that pre-assessment. Then you're going to create your research questions. You're going to conduct your evidence and your literature review. What are you going to need to develop and grab to understand what you're fully looking at? Looking at data collection. What is the research design and how are you going to collect the data to do that? And you're also going to be creating a timeline and an internal budget so that you can make sure that you have all of your bases covered in all of this. And section 5 of this toolkit is going to outline all the strategies for making that happen. The self-assessment, again, links you to a Department of Labor evaluation toolkit. You're going to see a lot of similarities between the Department of Labor and what we put together. But what we've done is moved it a step further. You know, we've done a little bit more of putting resources together, made it much more interactive, focused on Illinois priorities so that you can kind of align what you're doing with what we're doing together as a collaborative team in the WIOA space. So we're looking at how to make all of what the federal government Department of Labor is using, take that and put it into something that's very specific and usable by the Illinois programs. So that self-assessment also provides you additional frameworks. And then your evaluation team should conduct their assessment, review the tools that are available, and then look at the next steps that are outlined in the toolkit, which includes identifying your strengths, have meetings to review and discuss your assessment results. You don't have to have that as a plan, like once you get to the end and you've done your evaluation and assessment, now what are you going to do with that? That's kind of a front end planning, thinking about what you want to do as a next step, and develop your action plans. Again, we're doing evaluation as a part of this continuous improvement. So going into the evaluation, you want to be very clear about what you're looking for, how you're going to get the information, what you're going to do with the information, and then how you're going to continue to move forward. All of this is outlined very clearly in the tools that are available in this toolkit. Now, we recognize that some programs and some situations, we may want to bring in an external evaluator. This may be outside of our wheelhouse of skill sets. We know we need to do evaluation, but we want to bring in an expert. So we've even built in tools for how do you bring in an evaluator? What do you look for when you're bringing in external evaluators? And how do you bring them in and then share with them the Illinois priorities and the Illinois focus? So we've even contained all of that in a section for you if you decided to outsource that evaluation process and bring in an evaluator. So all of that is clearly defined as well in section 6. So our team really worked hard to think about everything that you might need as you're trying to conduct an evaluation. Additionally, we talked about where you're going to get your data. What does that look like? As you select an evaluator, where can you go and what information is available to you? So we review bid processes and partnership opportunities, and we talk about the ICCE data resources, Illinois WorkNet from BCEO, IDES, and of course IDHS. So we're looking at how do you bring these partners together for a full-on evaluation. And that is clearly outlined as well with strategies and resources and tools.
The next section of the framework gets into sort of the nuts and bolts of actually implementing your evaluation plan. You know, we've walked through a lot of the planning steps that go into preparing for an evaluation, but now we get into the practicalities of actually conducting your own evaluation. But this section is also helpful even if you're working with an external evaluator. The more you understand about the process, the better partner you're going to be with that external organization. So this section walks through a lot of the data analysis and data reporting and data collection sections, walks through picking the appropriate evaluation method, creating timelines and milestones so that you're staying within your deadlines and your budget that you've developed. And the data analysis plan really helps you create that roadmap that moves from collecting data to analyzing data to reporting the results of that data analysis. So data is obviously a critical part of evaluation. And there's a lot to consider with workforce development data. We're going to have to worry about privacy and confidentiality of the data, especially if we have access to individual level administrative data records. This section walks through a lot of the data security and related issues that you need to consider. So you need to make sure you're not sharing information about individual participants in your reporting process. Are you complying with secure collection and storage of data? And the agencies that you get the data from will help you come up with those plans and make sure that you're protecting the data in the most appropriate way. And the section, introduces you to some of the privacy laws and things you have to consider. The institutional review board, your agency or your evaluation partners agency may require you to go through a process called the institutional review board, and that is discussed within this section. And then, as we all know, the workforce development world has a lot of sort of terms and acronyms and things. And so we've tried to pull together a list of the terms and acronyms that are used within the framework so that you don't have to be Googling every time you see a word or you don't exactly know what it's referring to. You can go to this section to see the list. And finally, there's a link to the evaluation toolkit that the U.S. Department of Labor has put together. This provided a lot of the content for this framework, so you'll see that, but this document is over 100 pages long, so there is a tremendous amount of detail within this document. And I think you'll find if you're implementing an evaluation, there's a lot of useful information contained within this toolkit that the DOL has put together. And then finally, the framework has links to a number of other resources that you might find useful as you're going through this process. Other sources of information that can help you, think about issues related to creating your evaluation in a culturally responsive way, a case study using the diversity lens, and resources to help you create logic models. Creating a logic model is one of the more difficult processes for me personally. Some find it easier than others to create that visual model. It just doesn't come naturally to me. So there's a lot of useful information to help you walk through that process. So, this resources we've tried to bring in a variety of resources to help you work through this process. So finally, I'm going to walk through an evaluation that I did that we used as a pilot to evaluate this framework that we created. So this is an evaluation of the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunities Apprenticeship Illinois Navigator Program. So as I was doing this, I walked through the checklist to make sure that I was including all of the important components. And I found it really helpful. For example, I revised some of the questions based on the guidance in Section 5 about evaluation and SMART research questions. So the pilot we found quite useful when we were creating our own evaluation plan. So the Apprenticeship Illinois Navigator Evaluation includes elements of both implementation and outcome studies. We looked at how these grant funds were employed, whether the organizations that received them were implementing these programs in the way that they said they would, and in ways that coincided with the overall framework of Apprenticeship Illinois Navigators. And we also looked at some of the outcomes that were generated as a result of these programs. And here's the logic model that, so I actually worked with the navigators to generate this logic model as they provided feedback and helped me walk through the various stages of their logic model to make sure that we were capturing everything accurately. Here's just some examples of some of those key research questions that we developed. And like I said, these, in some cases, were revised based on the guidance within the evaluation framework. And then finally, some of the data sources we use, the navigators generate quarterly and annual reports. So especially for the outcome analysis, we referred to those and compiled data from those reports. But then we also conducted interviews with each of the navigators. So one-on-one interviews in this case, where we talked to each of them individually, and had those research questions in an interview guide that was provided to each of them in advance of our discussion. So they were prepared, wasn't coming in with any surprising questions to them. They knew what was going to be covered within the interviews. And then in the evaluation document, those discussions are summarized. The interviewees were informed that there was going to be some sort of protecting of their identities, but that their comments may be included, word for word in the document, but not specifically attributed. But of course, they understood that in some cases they might be identified based on their comments. And also we summarized the interviews and provided them back to the interviewees just to make sure that we were capturing the discussions accurately. And then, within the framework, we discussed the importance of a literature review. So as we were discussing the results of our interviews, we referred to our literature review to show that, some of the findings that from this study really emphasized or verified findings from previous studies. And the reason we do that is the more you build on previous research, the more valid that the findings from that agree with that previous research, the more validity it adds to your current study. So if you'd like a copy of this study, feel free to reach out to me and we can provide that to you.
So if you want to access the framework, there's a link available to you. But what I hope you're taking away from what we've shared with you is that evaluation in some minds might be a scary word, right? But we've really kind of taken away that fear and provided all of the tools and resources that make it a very doable and achievable process. And what I think Brian just outlaid was exactly how he did an evaluation on a workforce initiative so that we could make sure that we're moving forward with that continuous improvement model, looking at it with that equity lens. But he approached it using this toolkit and said, okay, I'm going to go through this. I'm going to see where I need to look at additional resources. I'm going to pull those ideas out and I'm going to implement them into our evaluation. So this is an easy to use tool that will kind of demystify that whole evaluation process and provide you all of the resources that you need. So make sure that you hit the link to go on there and check it out. And we're very interested in letting you use this and telling us what you think.